Hey guys, welcome back to Games of War. Today's episode we're going to take a look at some of my favorite original Xbox games. Now I've been talking about doing this Xbox Buyer's Guide for years, so instead of struggling to put together an hour-long episode and having it take forever and having uploads fail and all kinds of other shit go wrong, I'll just do smaller increments of my top favorite Xbox games until we go through them all. So hope you guys enjoy and thanks for watching. So the original Xbox was a very important console for myself personally. At that time, I was going through a rough time in gaming due to the fact that the Dreamcast was on its way out. I took that really personal for some reason, man. I thought it was really unacceptable that a system with that much momentum and that good of games to flicker out so quickly. And I blamed the PlayStation 2 a lot, even though it was Sega's fault. Sega made a lot of mistakes at that point. But I looked at PlayStation 2 as kind of like the enemy. Foolishly enough, I know it sounds silly, but I looked at the Xbox as a breath of fresh air. It was a brand new console with brand new original IPs, brand new exclusives, and a kind of restart in gaming for myself personally. And I knew that Sega was on board in a big way. The system specs really excited me. It was a beast of a console, and it had some great games, a lot of great exclusives. So let's go ahead and look at some of my favorite original Xbox exclusives. So right away what drew me to the system was the love from Sega. This was the closest thing that you were going to get to a Dreamcast 2.0. Many of Dreamcast canceled games continue on the Xbox. Many franchises went over to the Xbox. We got a new Toe Jam and Earl, man. I never thought we'd see another one of those ever. Shenmue 2 with the DVD of the original. Outrun, House of the Dead. So many great, amazing games from Sega. But some of my personal favorites that are exclusive to the system. The Otogi series. Now definitely some of the finest action games ever made on the Xbox. And some of my favorites from that generation. From Software created these games. The first one you play as Reiko, who was kind of born into a family of executioners. Their main goal and their bloodline was to execute, and he was given the task of executing his own father. Now when he could not go through with this, he decided to steal his ancestors' sacred sword, the Soul Shrine, and flee. Now, upon his leaving, there was a huge calamity that threatened the seal from the human world and the demon world. It broke open, and it created this huge war, almost leveling his home city of Kyoto. Now, Reiko was almost killed in this war and this broken seal. However, he was saved by this woman who was banished to the underworld, and she kind of brought him back, leaving him in halfway in a state between life and death. And his goal, his mission, is to hunt down these demons and kind of purge the world from them. Now, what impressed me initially about Otogi was the breathtaking dark environments. I love games that are centered on demons and dark wars. This definitely had it. The environments were dark, they were mysterious, they were kind of eerie in nature. I loved the play controls. The hack and slash combat was spot on. Absolutely loved the ability to dodge in the air and hack and slash and kind of chain everything together so you could stay in air for maximum amount of time, which some levels required you to stay in the air and continue these combos and continue hacking and slashing. I thought it was a brilliant system. Another aspect of Togi that I thought was simply amazing was the level of destructibility in the environments. The combat was fast-paced, it was furious, as you're zipping through the air, kind of dodging, teleporting, attacking, keeping these long combos going, swinging your sword. Anything you hit crumbles around you. Just adds that intensity, it adds that there's power behind each blow, and I thought it was amazing to see these environments crumble and things break and come down under the weight of your sword as you're doing battle with these enemies. Dodging through the air, attacking enemies was an awesome thing to see. The destructibility was just intense. Now the second game came along and added a bunch of new features. The story picks up right where the first one left off. However, Reiko is joined by 4 new characters. The ability to play them at different levels. You had like a big huge axe warrior. You had like a feral warrior that was lightning quick. You had a girl that wielded a scythe and was able to freeze foes. The big axe guy could kind of pick up enemies twice his size, throw them around the environments. Then you had a sorcerer who kind of resembled like almost a tree. It was a really cool addition to have new characters, different play styles, change up the gameplay. Once again, the destructible environments made a return. Everything is destructible, giving the combat that much more epic feel as you do battle and things are crumbling around you. Great level design. I just thought these games were amazing for their time. They still hold up to this day. The combat is amazing. Destructible environments, visuals, music, the whole atmosphere of these games is just second to none. From Software started out amazingly on the Xbox. These are some fantastic action games. If you like hack and slash games, definitely check out the Otogi series. Now what is quite possibly my favorite original Xbox game, and definitely my favorite rail shooter of all time, Panzer Dragoon Orta. Man, I absolutely have loved the Panzer Dragoon series since day one. I own the entire collection on the Saturn. I've finished every game. They are brutally difficult on the Saturn, the first 2, and this game is no exception. This is a beautiful game, gorgeous through and through. It could pass for an Xbox 360 game. It looks that damn good. The story in this one has the Empire rising back to power and in the process they have created these new weapons that are called dragon mares. They resemble dragons, and they are ancient technology driven, and they are going to put the world into chaos once again. Now, focusing heavily on a girl named Orta, who has been imprisoned in a tower for an entire life. She's been thought of as a harbinger of doom and kept away, locked in solitude for people's own safety. Now, there is a war that breaks out one night with the Empire, and just as these soldiers are beginning to close in on this tower and kill Orta, with the dragon mares destroying most of the city, a mysterious dragon appears and kills the surrounding dragon mares and frees Orta while she makes her escape on the back of this mysterious dragon. Now, as she escapes, she is hell-bent on finding answers as to why she has been imprisoned her entire life, what's going on with the Empire, and why the world is at war once again. But very much like the two original Saturn shooters, this is a rail shooter. You don't have complete freedom of movement, but you're able to fly all around the screen. The gameplay is kind of on rails. The ability in this game, or the hook of the gameplay, is that you can rotate around your dragon 360 degrees. Enemies are going to be coming from all different directions, and it's up to you to look up at the map and see where the enemies are coming from, and then rotate accordingly around and make sure you take care of all of them. Very intense gameplay. It's amazing, rotating around the dragon and firing in all directions. Just a sight to behold. The graphics are absolutely stunning, incredible. The changes in this game for the better are different dragon forms. You have 3 different forms you can morph to on the fly. You've got one form which is kind of like the standard, where you're able to shoot. You can use the pistol for kind of rapid fire. You can lock on with the dragon in the original form. If you change forms to the glide wing, you are much more mobile, faster, and you have got a wide circle, a wide arc to kind of shoot down incoming projectiles. A large radius you're able to fire on. The glide wing is super useful for taking in multiple incoming targets. If you need mobility. The original base class doesn't really have any weaknesses or strengths. It's just kind of overall, just kind of the average. Then you've also got the heavy wing, which is much more suited for powerful attacks. You have less lock-on ability, but what you do have lock-on is super powerful. However, when using the heavy wing, you're not able to dodge or boost. The other forms you're able to, so it's easy to avoid incoming gunfire. In all 3 of these different forms, you're able to level up and grow stronger the more you use them and collect these data chips. This makes for an incredibly satisfying gameplay hook, switching dragons on the fly, rotating around, targeting enemies. This game is intense. The challenge is just right. The music is absolutely phenomenal. Now, very much like Panzer Dragoon 2 on the Saturn, Panzer Dragoon Orta has Pandora's Box, which is a full set of unlockables and tons of extra content. The more you play through the game, the more you unlock, the better ratings you get at the end of the levels. Each level you play, you're going to be rated, your shoot down ratio, your points, all that, things of that nature. You unlock stuff from Pandora's Box, stuff like a full playable version of the original Panzer Dragoon. You're able to unlock a whole new side set of missions, 7 in total, based on this boy in the Imperial Army named Iva. His missions play into the fact of his story where he was born and he drank from a poisoned well as a young infant, and he's got this disease where he must take pills to survive every day, and his father once did battle using the dragon that Orta rides on, so it's kind of a woven-in story focusing on his backstory. Really interesting stuff, a whole new set of missions there. Tons of content to unlock, storyboards, music, all kinds of behind-the-scenes shit. There's a ton of content in Panzer Dragoon Orta. Yeah, in all honesty, this is my favorite game on the Xbox without a doubt. I don't think this will ever be topped. I'm really looking forward to the Switch remake of the first one, and I hope the series continues in some form, because Panzer Dragoon is a series that deserves to live on. It's an amazing franchise of games with some great gameplay, and just hearing that title music when that first remake was announced on the Switch, hearing that original Panzer Dragoon score, man, it brought a tear to my eye. It took me back to 1995 when I was blown away with the Saturn. What an amazing batch of games. Panzer Dragoon, I hope, is here to stay. Man, one of my personal favorites on the Xbox, another exclusive from Sega, this is Gun Valkyrie. And this is a truly amazing game that was pretty well received by critics and players alike. However, the complex controls kept a lot of people from really maximizing their enjoyment out of it. It was overly complicated in terms of controls in some aspects. Other aspects, it was really cool. The storyline in this is that British in the alternate future has kind of taken over the world as a superpower. The arrival of Halley's Comet, releasing some of the Halley's core. Humans that have come into contact with the pieces of Halley's core have been given superhuman abilities. They're able to start making breakthroughs in science and technology. Dr. Gate is one of the first humans that's come into contact with some of this Halley's Gate, and therefore he's able to start making some pretty radical breakthroughs in technology. He creates the Gun Valkyrie organization specifically for keeping this technology out of the wrong hands, preventing from misuse. Unfortunately, as most would predict, he's gone missing. At the start of the game, he's been missing for a few years, so it's up to the Gun Valkyrie Corps to kind of track down Dr. Gate, see what's happened, and also colonists of different planets have been disappearing In their place are giant insect-like aliens that are just kind of ravaging the planets and taking over and causing chaos. So you set out and play as either Kelly or Sabu. It's up to you to take back the world. Now in terms of gameplay, Kelly is able to lock onto multiple targets, shoot much quicker. She's much more nimble, much more agile. Sabu is a much slower character. You have to manually aim all your shots, make each shot count, but he's much more powerful. It's almost like thinking of this as a normal and hard mode, while Kelly being the much easier character and Sabu being the harder difficulty. But make no mistake, it's still a very difficult game, and it's the aforementioned controls. Now, I really enjoyed them. It took some time to master them, but once you do master them, there's nothing quite like it. You are able to move around with the left thumbstick. Shooting direction is handled with the right thumbstick, and then you can also click in the thumbstick to dash in any direction, and then you pull the left trigger to kind of jump and boost. And it's the combination of this dashing, boosting, and shooting that you're able to zip through these levels, kind of stay in the air. Some of these levels actually require you to stay in the air and to keep firing away at enemies, chaining together attacks, dashes, shooting. It's just an intense experience. The visuals are absolutely amazing. The science fiction alien landscapes look amazing in motion. Everything runs smooth. The storyline further unfolds in between levels through cutscenes. The story's pretty good. I enjoyed it, but it's overall the gameplay and just the overall uniqueness of the title. I thought it was a very refreshing title. It felt fresh and original. Now this game was originally supposed to come out on the Dreamcast. I remember reading about the game back in the early issues of the Dreamcast official magazine, where originally this game was going to be played using a light gun and a controller in tandem. That kind of piqued my interest. I thought that was really complicated, and it sounded like it might be fun if it could be properly pulled off, but it's kind of crazy playing the game simultaneously using a light gun and a controller. It reappeared on the Xbox just using the controller. Thankfully, I think that worked out for the better. It didn't really sell all that well, but for those that know, Gun Valkyrie has become one of their favorites, and for me, definitely one of my favorites on the Xbox. Sega was on fire, and Gun Valkyrie was at the top of the heap. Quantum Redshift turned out to be one of the games that were my favorite that I never even knew that I wanted. There wasn't much advertising or hype for this game. With a name like Quantum Redshift, you can kind of make your own conclusions. Very generic in terms of characters and overall packaging and look, but genericness aside, that's the only flaw I had with this game. Interesting backstory. The Wipeout team ended up splitting back in the early days of the Xbox, PS2, and GameCube, and half of the team went to form a new studio called Curly Monsters. This was their single and only release. Unfortunately, the game sold for dick, so the sequel was canned. Planned sequel with full Xbox Live support would have been really cool, but in terms of a futuristic racing game, this game is on point. The sense of speed is amazing. It could pass for a 360 game. That's how beautiful it is. Silky 60 frames per second racing. The only other flaw that I could think about, other than the genericness, is the track design, which is not bad by any means, but when you think of a futuristic racer, I just much would have preferred more, insane corkscrews, vertical drops, just stuff of that nature. It could have been a little bit more extreme in terms of track design. It plays it pretty safe, but the ships are really cool. Track design is still pretty good, pretty solid, and the speeds just get insane when you get into that redshift difficulty. The sense of speed is just blazing. So, futuristic racing game, one of my favorites on the Xbox, a beautiful game that didn't get nearly the love it deserves. Now, I absolutely fell in love with Death Row. What an amazing original Xbox exclusive that came out of nowhere for me personally. Very much like Quantum Redshift, I hadn't heard much about this at all, but I absolutely fell in love with the game. It's kind of like a futuristic version of rugby, maybe like some basketball, hockey, and disc golf all woven into one, with some extreme violence. Now, this game takes place in the future, where the sport of blitz has kind of taken over the planet as the most popular extreme sports around. Now, in the game, players attempt to throw a disc through a hoop, all while avoiding the full contact of the other team. When I say full contact, I mean this game is fucking brutal, man. You've got vicious punches, kicks, you can stomp people while they're down, bloodshed. I've never seen such violence in a game, a sports game. Almost like the Mutant League hockey and football on steroids, man. This game has it all in terms of violence. A really fun co-op gameplay. Playing as a multiplayer game, it is stellar. And really just playing the game in general, there's such a strong sense of teamwork, passing the disc between your players, avoiding the contact at the last minute. I just enjoyed the game thoroughly. It's very creative. One of the cooler aspects of Death Row is throughout the game as you play, the more you impress the crowd with violence, with skill, you earn credits, and then you can use these credits in between matches to purchase player-enhancing drugs, kind of get your guy all jacked up on steroids and all kinds of other performance-enhancing drugs to give you the edge in combat. Sadly, this game did receive some critical acclaim, great reviews, and great word of mouth. Unfortunately, it just didn't sell well. But if you like an extreme sports game, that is kind of like for not sports games fans. It's really original. It has a brand new set of rules, a fresh concept, tons of violence. I absolutely love Death Row. Give it a shot. Multiplayer, you can't go wrong. What a fun game. Mad Dash Racing was another pleasant surprise. This was a launch game for the Xbox. I picked this up after I kind of had my fill of all the other launch games that I wanted to play. And based on my love for Running Wild on the PlayStation, and I adored Sonic R on the Saturn, both on-foot racing games, so I decided to give Mad Dash Racing a try, and I wasn't disappointed, man. And one of the things that really impressed me about Mad Dash, and the Xbox in general, back then, it was such a powerful system. These levels were absolutely massive, teaming with shortcuts, different routes throughout the levels. They were massive, no doubt about it. And what the cool thing about Mad Dash Racing was, each of the characters you could choose from had different classes. Now you had your bashers, your gliders, and your dashers, and they were able to exploit different shortcuts in the track based on their powers. So the bashers, you could kind of find false walls in the environments and kind of bash through them for shortcuts. Gliders could jump across platform to different sections, and dashers, you're able just to get a dash of speed and make the most of your time. And the levels were really set up to exploit these different characters' abilities. So just multiple paths you could take throughout the huge levels depending on which character you had. I had a great time finding all the different shortcuts with the different characters. Lots of platforming. It was almost like a racing platforming game mixed. Controls were really good. Characters were pretty cool. Music was great. I just absolutely loved the huge, expansive levels. All really creative. Mad Dash Racing was a great on-foot racer, and I really enjoyed this launch game on the Xbox. Brute Force was really interesting. This was being hyped up as the second coming of Halo, except instead of being first person, this was a third person squad-based tactical shooter, and it was being hyped all to hell. Microsoft is pimping it out as the next coming of Halo. If you love Halo, gotta have Brute Force, one of the next big exclusives for the Xbox. Gonna span a huge franchise. Sadly, it never came to be. Digital Anvil closed up shop shortly after this game. It sold really well. It actually broke first day sales records of Halo, and first week sales were also really impressive, but unfortunately it dropped off after that. It still was a really good game. I just think the main problem with Brute Force was in the videos that were advertising this game, it was showing these 4 different characters that you played through in Brute Force as being totally reliant on each other, really taking use of that co-op, tactical, squad-based gameplay, using their abilities in tandem to complete these levels. Lots of great use of these abilities that really made you think about it. When in actuality, when the game released, it was more of just a simple run-and-gun shooter, balls-to-the-wall action, which was nothing wrong with that, but don't hype up something as a squad-based tactical shooter with all these different great abilities when it's just, you can get the same effect just running through the game. Very few instances actually took advantage of the powers specifically. Other than that, the story was pretty cool. It took place in the future where humans had colonized other planets in outer space. Now, playing as a single-player game, you start playing as Tex, who we were introduced first. He is the big brute marine character. He can kind of dual wield. He's got the largest life bar. He can go into a berserker mode, use a special, and dual wield, shoot 2 guns at the same time. Rapid fire. He's a brute of a character. As you go through the missions and progress through the story, you meet the other 3 characters, and they are kind of woven into the storyline that way. Pretty soon you run into the next character, which is Brutus. Really cool character. He is kind of a step down from Tex in terms of power. Still one of the more powerful characters. He is able to use a thermal vision. He is slowly able to regenerate his health. So he's definitely got his advantages in battle as well. Next you meet Hawk, and she is very nimble, very fast. She's able to go invisible and use these badass melee attacks while invisible. Very quick character using lighter guns. Smaller health bar, but characters that like speed and using more of the sneaking approach, definitely check out Hawk. Flint is the sniper of the group. She's able to lock on, fire off 1-kill headshots. Very easy to auto-aim and target enemies, and quick kills. Pretty cool character. All these characters are swappable once you meet them all and they're all in the storyline together. You can swap them at will using the D-pad, so it's cool to have that freedom of choice, switching characters on the fly for different situations. There's no Xbox Live, which was sadly missed in this game. However, you could do the entire campaign co-op split screen, and you could also link the Xboxes up for the system link. So the co-op was definitely really fun to play. I just wish there was more emphasis on the squad and tactical, using the abilities in tandem. I really was piqued by that initial video revealing the game, showing that teamwork using special abilities. Run and gun is still cool by me, but I'd much rather the tactical, slower paced action of the original videos, man. It looked really cool. I'm all for using special abilities in tandem and using teamwork. But overall, Brute Force was a huge game for Microsoft. It didn't disappoint for some, and for others it was a huge letdown. I think if you were expecting the next Halo, you were definitely going to be let down, but overall Brute Force was a really fun game, and it's a really cool exclusive. It looks great. Advent Rising is without a doubt one of my favorites on the original Xbox. This game is ambitious as all get out, man. They poured love into this game like no other. They had plans for this universe. They had a trilogy planned, comic books, graphic novels, you name it. Sadly, I think the game nearly bankrupt or completely bankrupt the developer. Unfortunately, it didn't sell well, but man, I absolutely loved what they were going for, despite the graphical choppiness and frame rate issues, because there definitely was a lot of issues and bugs plaguing this game, but I saw through it. I saw their vision, their ambition, and I fell in love. The game opens up, introduces you to Gideon Wyeth, who is your main character. You are attacked while you are escorting a group of human ambassadors on this space station. Tons of scripted, epic happenings in this game. I absolutely love the scripted events in this game. They just were so epic and so ambitious in its scope, man. You could see the graphic engine just struggling to keep up and keep everything going smoothly, because it really was ambitious. The environments were absolutely huge, almost too big. It didn't need to be so big, but it really worked well for the combat. The flick targeting system was amazing. The combat was so much fun. Learning new abilities as you went on. The powers were awesome. Kind of reminded me of Psyops a little bit with the telekinesis and all the different powers you could use. And they actually really came into play with the boss battles. They were really some inventive boss battles that made good use of your powers. The planets, the atmosphere, the overall solar system, the world they created was just spot on. Lots of vehicles that you could drive. The controls were actually pretty good. A little sloppy, but the frame rate problems really hindered a lot of portions of this game. But overall, man, you could just tell they were going for something so grandeur and so epic in its scale that you can't help but fall in love and appreciate what they were going for in this. The storyline is without a doubt the highlight here for me. A lot of video game storylines are kind of subpar, if I'm being honest. Very few really stand out to me. Advent Rising is a game full of political intrigue, death, love, betrayal. This game has it all, and it's told so well through the gameplay, the scripted events that are just so epic in scope, the gunplay, the gameplay. Combat is amazing in this game. Everything really came together for me to create one of the most intriguing games that I've ever played. Still to this day, Advent Rising stacks up there with one of the best sci-fi games that I've played. I really would have loved to see the planned PSP game and the sequels. What an amazing game. I can't gush enough about Advent Rising. Go back if you haven't played this, give it a chance, and really take in what they were going for, because you can definitely see the passion poured into this game. Sci-fi adventure, big blockbuster, scripted events. You cannot go wrong with Advent Rising. Breakdown I really have fond memories for. A buddy of mine picked this up back in the day. He had got bit with the Halo bug at the time. Everything was first person this, first person that, everything first person. Myself, I was always much more of a third person fan, but I agreed to, he picked it up and I said I would sit with him and play it, maybe switch on and off and just go through the game together. And I was trying to keep my cool, like, this game sucks. And the story started off, you play as Derek Cole, as generic and predictable as they come. You wake up with no memory, you're in a derelict kind of laboratory, and this lab gets attacked and you're on the run, figuring out you're like a super soldier, and you have memory start slowly coming back to you. You're saved by this girl and she kind of fills you in. First person puking though, I gotta say. First person puking in the breakdown is pretty freaking impressive. I was kind of hooked after that. Everything else, hand-to-hand combat, pretty cool in first person. Storyline was actually pretty good. The gameplay was also pretty good. I gotta say that by the time, I never told him this, but by the time the credits rolled in this, I was actually a fan. I went out and bought the game a few days later. I didn't tell him, but I really did enjoy Breakdown. The storyline was pretty cool. I think what I liked most about this game is that you really viewed everything through the eyes of Derek Cole. Whether it was the hand-to-hand combat, whether it was the gadgets, whether it was the powers, everything was first-person perspective. It really gave you a sense of immersion, like you couldn't really get in the third person. I gotta admit, it really worked well for this game. I really enjoyed the switch of not being just a straight first-person shooter. The adventure elements really work well in this game. Gameplay was really cool. Breakdown was a great exclusive from Namco, and it really surprised the hell out of me, I gotta be honest. A great first-person adventure game. Closing out the video with some honorable mentions, mentioning briefly, Cyanide is a really cool shoot 'em up on the Xbox. I think this is like the last game made for the Xbox, or maybe the last exclusive. I'm not quite sure, but it plays like a twin stick shooter. Graphics are really impressive, great music, a really strong emphasis on storyline in this one, which is pretty odd for a shooter, but overall a great shoot 'em up on the Xbox. The gameplay is rock solid, very difficult, but yet highly enjoyable. Fresh off the success of the Star Wars RPGs, BioWare was obsessed with the Xbox, and they came through massively with Jade Empire. This is a martial arts themed RPG with the branching storylines and multiple decisions and choices found in the Star Wars games and later Mass Effect, all here and present in Jade Empire. A fantastic game. I love the setting. I love the combat that was based on real life martial arts disciplines. Overall, the story was great. This is a massive RPG that will consume your soul. I had a lot of fun with Jade Empire. I feel like this has kind of been forgotten about a little bit. BioWare's got so many great epics that this one kind of gets lost in the shuffle, but don't let that happen. This is a brilliant RPG. I really enjoyed this one. From the creators of the original Tomb Raider, years in the making, multiple consoles spanning, finally came out on the original Xbox. This game was really cool. It had a lot of good humor, a really cool story and characters. The voice acting was spot on. Really some weird controls in this. The way you controlled the character was pretty odd. You used the left analog stick for all this movement and the camera controls all in one. Jumping was really spotty at best, but overall it's the characters, the pacing, and the voice acting storyline that really kept me in this one. The humor was great, and overall it was a pretty good kind of like swashbuckling adventure. From the creator of Rayman, we've got Torque, the prehistoric adventure, spanning different timelines back in the prehistoric age with some transformations. This is a pretty cool platformer with some solid visuals and some great gameplay. Check it out if you like platformers. It's definitely got that Rayman flair to it. Raises Hell is a really cool shooter if you like murdering Teletubby-like creatures in brutal fashion. What you think as these cute little lovable creatures are actually like vicious, and they're hell-bent on taking over the world, and you are the last of your alien kind, and these guys are just trying to hunt you down and slaughter you, and you turn the tables on those little bastards, and this gets violent, bloody, some really cool deathmatch options. It's just a fun game, tons of violence. I really liked Raises Hell. From David Cage of Heavy Rain fame, this was the original game that started it all for me, the first of the kind that I played like this, Indigo Prophecy. If you played Heavy Rain, you know the drill. It's kind of like a live action thriller, almost like a play-along movie. Keeps on the edge of your seat. A really good story that kind of branches off into kind of crazy ramifications later on. But serial killer, storyline, action gameplay, kind of controlling your own movie. Different situations are edge of your seat. I really enjoyed Indigo Prophecy. This one started it off for me. What a great game. So hope you guys have enjoyed taking a look at some of my favorite games on the original Xbox. And I gotta say, what a fantastic system to collect for. This was my main console during that generation. I was open to giving a console a fresh start with a fresh set of games. A lot of Sega love on this console. And overall, right now in today's time and age, it's a great time to collect for the Xbox. Everything is dirt cheap. Very few games are expensive or are rare. So you can just go nuts, go crazy picking up all these games for dirt cheap and amass yourself quite a collection of great games. Powerful system, holds up to this day. Xbox is fantastic. Thank you guys for watching. Games of War is absolutely nothing without you.